This is Palantir on the 5-minute time frame. I'm going to give you price targets for Monday. We ended the week at $18.89, up more than 5%. The 52-week low, $5.92. The 52-week high, $20.24. Taking a look at the performance for the week, we are up a whopping 22%. Congratulations if you've made some money off of this stock. The 1 year performance, we are at 21%, and year to date, a 187% return on your money. I am in this trade. Now, it's considered a strong buy, and we already met the 1 year price target at $15.66. This was an old price target that we met, and this was also an old price target that we also met. And we landed right here. To the north side from where we are takes us back to the middle of the trend and the base at 1949. This is also resistance from where we are and a potential take profit area for some people. Above that, 2093, another level of resistance and a possible take profit area. 2172. And at 4 standard deviations and another level of resistance and a potential take profit area, 2249. To the south side at -2 standard deviations, if we hit this line, I will anticipate a bounce as people buy in. Now, there's a gap that forms to the south side at 1746. -3 standard deviations is 1717. And -4 standard deviations and another possible buy-in area, 1645. That gap closes out at 1494. Watch out for another gap to the south side at 1418, closes out at 1394. So lots of potential to go to the south side if you like to go short or you're waiting to possibly buy in. Now, looking left, this gap closed to the upside on earnings on the 2nd of November. We gapped up because of a good earnings report, and that was on the 2nd. So we are done with that. And note the take profit area right here at resistance falls back down to the line right here at support, bounces up, grinds sideways, hits this support line, bounces up, didn't quite make it to 2 standard deviations, but just grinding sideways now. And looking left again, this gap closed to the downside at 1490, and this one closed out at roughly 1620. And that one closed up 1628, closed up at 1585. Whenever we gap up, I will anticipate a gap down and that we fill that gap downward. It could take a very long time to do so, but the potential is there. The RSI is at let me move this back, 53. And note, no stock stays above this area without falling down, consolidating, falling down, going back up. This is the potential sell zone area at 70 and above. That is considered overbought. So anytime we hit that, I know that there's going to be a movement. And a correction back down to 30 possibly could take a while, but when you look back in time with the RSI, note the bounce at below 30 on its way up to 70, and the cycle repeats itself. And you can look at this on the 1 minute, 3 minute, 5 minute, but if you're making bigger moves and trading, I like to go to the monthly. But let's take a look at this on the daily. We are nearing the overbought area where if you are playing on the daily, because they give you different buy and sell signals depending upon the time frame that you're in. So I would be aware of this as we go up and then possibly go back down for consolidation. And on the weekly, We're at 64 with room here to the upside. And on the monthly, we are at 59. I like to troll for stocks down here and then ride my way up on the monthly. And I like to do it and break down individual stocks within Vanguard's ETF, Fidelity, Schwab, you pick it, just track it for yourself. And you can troll for undervalued stocks that hopefully won't go out of business, right? If Vanguard's investing in it and, within the couple hundred stocks, top 500, 200, I've got the list right here for myself. And that way you kind of play it conservatively. All right, note the sell-off here. If we are down here, there's a bounce to the upside. This is resistance, and the sell-off back to the base. Didn't quite make it to the base, but close enough. Bounced up a little bit, went back to the baseline. All stocks go through the baseline here before going to the upside or the downside. I consider that the resting place. The next stock I want to go over is Apple. I've talked about this many times in the past. I'm also in this trade, Palantir and Apple and many other stocks. We ended the week at 176.65, down just a little over 0.5%. Now, the 52-week low, 124.17. The 52-week high, 198.23. I think the last time I bought this was in the 140s, but I've got tons and tons of this stock at way under 124. And that is my retirement. All right, the 1 week performance, we are up nearly 6%. For the 1 month period, up 3% year to date, up 35%. Under the technicals, we're considered a buy. The 1 year price target is 195, which represents a 10% increase from where we are. Now, to the north side from where we are takes us back to the middle of the trend and the baseline at 178.06, a potential take profit area for some people as well, if you're playing it conservatively within the linear regression, and at 2 standard deviations and another possible take profit area, 180.89, 182.36, 183.76. If we make it to this level, this would close out this gap that I have been tracking. And that gap formed at 175.44 on its way up to the 180s. And this gap closed to the downside at 174, gapped up on earnings. And what goes up must come down. That gap, let me back this up here. This gapped down. So when there's a gap down, I anticipate it to gap up to close out. So we will eventually on this one close out. Very close to that. I anticipate this will close out on Monday. And that would take us to 177.73. Okay. And this one gapped up. And then if it gaps up, I anticipate a gap down to fill. And that's where we closed out that 174.21. And looking left, this gap closed out at 173.27. This gap right here is still in play. This one closed out at 168.33 to the downside, 165.99. And I will extend this. Hopefully better days are ahead, but the likelihood of this closing is still pretty great. And that would close out at 164.19. The RSI is hitting 66. We are at 66, room to go up just a little bit more, but note how this falls apart. When we reached 84, anytime we hit 70 and above, my radar goes off and I will anticipate a sell-off as people take their profits and they run. And who knows if we wind all the way back down here, eventually we will, to ride back up again, according to the analysts who think that there is a lot of potential to the upside. On the daily, we're turning down at 54. Note the bounce here at 30, the bounce at 30 down here, the sell-off at 70 and above. 51 on the monthly, and 57 on, excuse me, that was the weekly, and this is the monthly. Now I want to show you something else, just very quickly, and I will wrap this up. Take this back to the 5-minute time frame. Now, here are some stocks that ran within Vanguard's VTI. So anything that runs up, I look for a gap, and because it ran up, I will anticipate a gap to the south side. And if you look for gaps to the south side, that means the potential is there to go short, possibly, if you like to go short, or possibly wait for a better entry. Now, there's a gap on MRNA, and this gap takes us down to 71.48. But I know that when I play this, anything that is inside -2 and 2 standard deviations all day long, I anticipate. But the minute we get out to the outliers, I will anticipate a sell-off. So if we get down to here, I will anticipate a bounce as people buy the dip, another buy-in area here and here. Of course, it could free fall and continue to go down, but that would be a possible buy-in area for me, and then sell-in areas up here. But if you're playing conservatively, you can play it to the middle line if you're down here, or within -2 and 2 is how I like to do it. But if you're scalping or trying to just get in and get out, just play within these margins. If you're up here, play along there. If you're down here, get out up here. But if you're shorting, sell out maybe if you're up here and get out before it goes down even more. But obviously look at your indicators, play your favorite indicators and read that. But I don't like to micromanage too much. So that's why I like to troll on the monthly, set it and forget it. But I do a little bit of swing trading as well. So there's a gap to the south side on MSI that takes us down to 281. ABNB takes us down to 115.66. I'm in this trade here, Dominion. That would take us to roughly 40.25. ARK, there's this gap that takes us to 38.26. And I'm going to turn on my magnet so I get a more precise level. So another gap, we are not in that channel yet, but the potential is there, 35.32. Monster Energy, this gap would take us to 52.69. Snow, that one already closed. Goldman Sachs, a couple of gaps to the south side. That would take us out to 307.17, and this one at 313.98. We are not in that channel just yet. This one would take us out to 104.57. This gap already closed to the upside at 103.33. This gap needs to be extended and then closed out. We have hit that target. And this one that I have been tracking closed out also. So we are done with that. So we've got this one to look out for. And if you want to see more gaps, pull out to the daily, the weekly, and the monthly and look for gaps to the upside or south side, whatever you like to play. I like to look for gaps that are down here and then ride my way up. Or if we are down here without a gap, look for a gap up to ride to the upside. Forward, I've talked about this many times as well. We've got a gap that takes us to 1136. I'll extend that out. A gap to the south side here at 1014, 992. AMD, ignore all my horizontal lines. We reported earnings, as I mentioned earlier. And this gap closed out. This gap closed out to the upside. I last talked about it at 108.04, and now we're at 112. And we are on our way to this line. See, that's kind of going sideways a little bit, down and sideways. But if we hit this line, I will anticipate a bounce. Truist, talked about this many times as well. This gap takes us to 30.02, and this one 28.50, not in that channel yet. This one takes us down to 93.80. And then if you want to look for gaps to the upside, I will go over that later. But because we gapped down, I anticipate gaps up. So if this rests and this is resistance and it makes its way back down here, I would enter and then ride it to a potential line here, or just wait for this gap to close out and get out if you're just day trading or doing short swing trades. I'll go over these later. And that does it for me because this is getting long. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great trading week.